Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Vectorworks 2025 classes and layers. One of the biggest challenges is keeping drawings organized and easy to use. Vectorworks uses classes and layers to help define where things go and what things are. We'll also be using sheet layers as well, as opposed to design layers, but that's another big one we use, but I'm only going to touch on that one briefly in this video. We won't get into that too much until we start talking about viewports, exporting, and cleaning up your drawings for final presentation. So today we're mainly going to be looking at classes and design layers. So in general, design layers are the where of the drawing, and classes are the what. So generally for design layers, let's look at those first. I use that for larger chunks and categories. For example, in this show, I have layers set up for lighting, the building itself, the stage shell, and for the set. So I can isolate different things in here. If I was drawing a house, for example, if you're using Vectorworks for architecture or anything like that, you would maybe put each floor of your house on a different design layer so that you can stack them up. That's kind of what you can do with design layers that you can't do with classes, is you can stack things up. So each layer has its own elevation. But for theater, it's a little bit different. So I generally use it like this, where I use one for the theater space, and I can turn off just the building. I can turn off just the stage shell. I can turn off my lighting stuff, and I can really zoom in and just see my set. So that's kind of my workflow in designing for theater, is that I'll work the bigger portions as layers. Then within that, you have classes, such as furniture, trim work. So let's narrow in just on set for a second. Let's get rid of all these other ones. So then within set, I have classes such as furniture, which I can toggle on and off. I have flats that I can turn on and off. I have trim work, molding, soft goods, things like that. So you can really break down your classes into smaller categories that have similar attributes. So that's sort of the difference between classes and layers. And I think probably the best way to do that is just to go through and show you a little bit how I personally use it in my workflow to organize my drawings. So this one, for example, let's go ahead and turn back on stage shell, building, lighting, etc. So this has the whole little theater space in here, as you can see. Anything that you click on, any object, up here in object info, it'll tell you what class it is and what layer it's on. So this is the 3D back wall, and it's on the building layer. Say I'm zooming around and I want to get a nice shot of the stage, but this wall is in my way. I usually always make my back wall its own class so that I can go into classes and I can turn off that back wall if I want to. So I can get my camera down and see right into where I want to be. Something you should know about classes and layers, they all have these visibility options. So this is where you turn things either off, or you can gray them out, is this third option. So they're kind of ghosted there. You can still sort of see the building, but it's ghosted out, and you can focus in on just the thing that you want to be looking at. So you can do that by both class and layer. The other thing you need to know about classes and layers is that there's this options up here. So under here, you have the option to only show the active layer. What that means is whichever layer this little check mark is next to is the only layer that you will see, regardless of what this visibility says. Other options include gray others, so everything will be grayed except the one you're working in. Gray snap means that you can't necessarily see it, but if you were drawing in here, you could still snap 2 points on architecture that is grayed out. And then show snap others. I can get in and I can snap to anything in here on the building shell, for example. I'm in the set layer actively, but I can get in and I can still snap to the building shell, but I cannot modify the building shell if I tried to. It wouldn't allow me to do that. Now, if I have show, snap, modify others, anything that's showing on here, I can get in and modify. Even though I'm in my set layer, I can still get in and I can delete things in other layers or add to them. So usually I leave mine on show, snap, and then I change the visibilities in here if I need to. Show, snap, modify is good if you're trying to find something but you don't know exactly what layer it's in. So those are your visibilities, and it works the exact same for classes. You can turn them off here, and then you have the same options under class options as to whether you want to only see the active class or if you want to show, snap, and modify others. But in general, I leave all of my class options and all my layout options. My general workflow is going to be in show, snap, others. The other thing I mentioned about sheet layers is that they are stackable. So they all have an elevation, really. If you want to open up and get more detail on your layers, you can click right here, double click that, and that'll bring up your organization window here. And here you can look at your classes, your design layers, etc. So in here you'll see an elevation. My lighting grid is at 14 foot. What that means is if I am in my lighting layer and I'm working in here, anything I draw is going to come in at 14 foot. That saves me the hassle of each lighting instrument that I draw having to, or drop in. They have, in Spotlight, they have pre-made lighting instruments you can drop in. But everything I place on my lighting will fall right onto my grid. Similarly, if you look, the set is set at 1'10". I did that so that when I'm drawing set pieces, they will populate on top of this 1'10" high stage. So you can change things like that. So say we wanted to move our set up. I can just double click in here and let's make this elevation at 4 foot. Okay, so now you'll see the set is floating above the stage there. So that's something you can do. You can change the elevations of things, and that makes it pretty handy. The other place you can get up and change which design layer or class you're working in is up here. But I've just kind of gotten accustomed to working down in this navigation pane. So let's go ahead and let's reset this to 1'10". The other thing you'll notice is you can drag these and you can change the order of them. So select one and then you can drag it up here. So it's sort of like Photoshop. Whatever you have dragged towards the top is what you will see first if you're looking down on it from the top. One last thing to note here also about layers. If we open this up, you'll see that each layer is in a scale. So right now I'm in 1/4 inch scale. All of these layers are in 1/4 inch scale. If one of your layers is in a different scale, it will not overlay with the others. The reason being it's apples and oranges, right? So if I get in here and I change this scale from 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, so you'll notice when you come back here, the stage is not showing up anymore because it's in a totally different scale. So they simply won't overlay. It's doing its own thing. Meanwhile, everything else is still in 1/4 inch. So if sometimes you're not seeing a layer, oftentimes it's because your scales do not match up here. So check that out. You can change it in here. Put that back at 1/4 inch. And everything is back where it should be. Let's take a look at another example. So this was for a show in a different theater. But as you'll see here, very similar setup. I have within my layers, this has a lot of other ones such as gantries. It just has a bunch of other stuff in there. But my essential ones that I generally rely on, again, are going to be the theater, seating, and the set. The set won't turn off because I'm actively in it, so you can't make it invisible if you're actively in it. So similarly, I can turn off just this back wall. I made that a class once again. I think that's my south wall. So I can get down and I can look at this. Now in this show, for example, I have different classes for moving scenic elements. So in this show, there were doors that opened. There was this little cabinet in the center that disappears into the floor. So I just made those as classes so I can toggle those on and off and see what they'll look like in their on position versus their off position. Same thing, I have soft goods is its own class, so I can turn that on or off. And that's all available in classes. That's kind of how I like to do it. And I can get rid of the cabinet, etc., etc. If I don't want to see all those people, if they're bothering me, I can just turn off my people. I can turn off the furniture, whatever it is. The other thing I want to show you in this, just real quick, I had mentioned sheet layers. So sheet layers, we have classes, design layers where you actually design, and then sheet layers are where we get into presentation and layout. So if I look at one of those, basically what you can do is you can take a picture of different scenic elements from your design layer, and then you just set that picture down onto a printable page. So you'll see here it has all the pertinent information there in the title block, renderings, dimensions, and this is where you'll do most of the detail work of sections, elevations, and so on. So that's what sheet layers are generally used for, but again, we're going to stick right now mostly in classes and layers. And finally, let's take a look at one more use for classes and layers. So in this show, this is one I'm just kind of noodling on. I'm playing with ideas. I'm not sure what I like. So what I've done is I've just created a different layer for any number of different sets. So you'll see here I have 7 different versions of the set. So I can kind of flip through and see what I like. But as an example, so this one has this weird staircase unit, and it's on a revolve. But if I want to see what that revolve looks like at different spikes or at different positions, I can just have each one be its own separate layer. So I can spin it around and see what all the different looks are going to be. And that makes presenting this to directors and other designers a little bit easier, so they can just jump from scene to scene over here to get a sense of what things are going to look like. So let's go ahead real quick, just as an exercise. Let's open up a new document. And from here, let's draw ourselves a little stage. And we'll make that, I don't know, 32 foot by 20 foot. Oh, it did 20 inches. I'll just tab back into it, 20 foot. So we have our little stage area here. And on our stage area, we're going to have a little table, maybe a little bar top, and we'll have a couple of stools sitting around it. So I'll just copy that. If you hold Control while you drag something, it will copy it. So I've got some stools and I've got a little bar top on our stage. And then maybe there's a lighting hang position out here that we can hang lights on, etc., etc., etc. So that's kind of the ground plan of it, right? What we'd want to do is, from the get-go, we probably want to start dropping these into their own design layers. So I would create a new design layer for my stage. You can either rename design layer 1 as stage, to create an entirely new layer, you can right-click in this field, and it'll bring up this, new, and I'll call this set. So I can select, actually I'm not in stage. Everything currently is in stage because that was the default. So I can grab all of these items that I want to be in set, and then up here in object info, you can tell it exactly which design layer you want it to be on. So I want that to be on set now. I'll go back to stage, and here's a third way to create a new layer. So we select the object, and we come up to what layer it's supposed to be on. It's on stage currently, and I'll just put it on its own design layer. And we'll call that lighting. So now we have all these shapes, and they're all in their own little world. So I have just my set, I have just my stage, I have just my lighting. Now let's expand all this up into 3D. I will extrude that one, I don't know, 3 inches, so it's just a little teeny tiny bar. The set, let's extrude these, 32 inches. Let's extrude the bar, 42 inches. So now we've got this little thing. Let's go into our stage, and our stage will be 2 feet high. Great. Now let's turn everything on together. You'll notice, let's make them all visible. And right now you're not seeing them. They're grayed out because the visibility up here is off. So I'll just go to Show Snap Others for layers and Show Snap Others for classes. So right now you'll see my lighting bar is on the ground and my set pieces are buried in the stage, which is not ideal. We can fix that by going into our layers dialog here. So I want my set, I want the elevation to be at 2 feet because the stage itself is 2 feet high. 2 feet. And lighting, let's say we want our lighting grid is going to be 16 feet up. So now everything populates in the right place. Just like that. Our light bar is 16 feet up off the ground, and our set is sitting perfectly on the stage. Now that that's done, we have all of our different layers. If I am in my set layer, anything I draw, I don't know, that, it is going to be coming in right at the 2 foot. So I don't need to physically pick this up and set it onto the stage. Move that over here. You'll see that that lives perfectly on there. So that's kind of the nice thing about layers, design layers, is that you can set elevations for large groups of things. And then within that, again, we have classes. So let's look at just our set. And we have our bar here, and we have our, whatever this is, a trunk, and we have our stools. So we can make these stools their own class, and we'll call it stools, for example. So I can go in here. It's currently in the default, which is none, no class. You can add a class here, which would be stools. Or, again, if you're down here, you can just right-click, new class, stools. So now these, if I go up here, the drop-down now has stools as an option. So if I really just want to look at only stools, I can turn these off and just see my stools. So that's another way that classes and layers will really help you just kind of isolate what you're looking at and where it is. So I encourage you to get in and just kind of play with it. There's a ton of stuff you can do. It can get a little confusing at times, but the best way is to just kind of figure out what works best for your workflow and roll with that. If you have any questions, though, please reach out. All right, thanks very much. Bye-bye.